Hi everybody. Today we're going to look at one of the important bones in the forearm. In our previous video we discussed the ulnar. Now today we're going to look at the radius and important landmarks and there are projections, protrusions and features of a radius. One of the important thing that we need, so this is the forearm, okay. So one of the important things that we need to know about the radius is basically the side or the position that it holds, that is located in the forearm. And most of the in the future you would see the term what we call as the radial side. So radius in the forearm is always located laterally, and the ulnar is located medially. So this is the forearm. Basically we have two bones. Medially located bone will be the ulnar and laterally will be the radius, and we're going to look at the radius and focus on the landmarks detailed a bit later. So don't forget, if you forget everything, don't forget that radius is laterally located in the forearm. It's a radial side. So the ulnar side is referred to as a medially located structure. The radial side is referred to as the laterally located structure, whatever you're discussing. Yes, okay. So also on the medial side of the radius, this is the radius, okay. This is the radius. So this is the medial side of the radius. This is the lateral side of the radius, okay. And we can look at the borders and surfaces a bit later, but one thing that I want to show you here is that the medial side of the radius is really sharp, just like the lateral side of the ulnar is really sharp. So these borders, what we call as a border, are really sharp ridges, and is also referred to as interosseous border. And therefore, remember when we discussed the ulnar, we talked about the interosseous membrane that attaches to the lateral border of the ulnar. So the medial border of the ulnar attaches the interosseous membrane. Okay. So this is also important. So what you see between the ulnar and radius is the membrane, and it's a fibrous joint, and it is a syndesmosis type of joint, and it is located around about lower 2/3 of the radius is occupied by this membrane. So around about somewhere around here it would be occupied by the interosseous membrane between the ulnar and the radius. So as you can see, the radius and the ulnar in the elbow forms the elbow joint with the humerus, and we're going to look at that a bit in details a bit later. So we have the elbow joint formed by the humerus, ulnar medially and laterally by the head of the radius. Remember, when we talked about the head of the ulnar was distally located. So it's the far end part of the ulnar. Distally located part would be the head. However, now here the head of the radius is proximally located. Okay, so this is the opposite what we saw in the ulnar. And the other thing is that the distal end of the radius, as you can see, it's widened, right? It gets wide and it gets a little flat, and the distal end of the radius attaches to the carpal bones. We're going to look at the carpal bones in our next video, and it articulates with the scaphoid and lunate, the radius. However, the ulnar is not attached to any carpal bone. So basically, when we talk about the wrist joint, basically the wrist joint is composed of radius and the carpal bones, forming the radiocarpal articulation, radiocarpal joint. Besides this, we also have connections or joints or articulations between the two forearm bones located in the forearm, the proximal radio-ulnar joint and distal radio-ulnar joint. So we have joints with the head of the radius and the radial notch of the ulnar. So we have the articulation at that particular point which is referred to as proximal radial ulnar joint. This radial ulnar joint is really important in that it is a pivotal type of joint, and one of the two important motions that is allowed in this motion is pronation and supination. So you have this motion here. Okay, so we're going to talk. I'm going to show you a closer look how this motion occurs in the joint capsule. So what happens is that radius moves along or over the radius. Okay, so it has a rotational movement. So this is a pronation. Okay, this motion is called a pronation, and coming back to its original anatomical position is supination. All right, it's like this. So you have well, let's say let me do it with the left arm. So this is the radial part. This is the ulnar part. Oh, this is the radius on the lateral side. Ulnar is located on the medial side. So what happens is that you have pronation like this. Okay, so this is pronation. So the radius moves upon on the ulnar like this. So this is the pronation, and coming back to its normal anatomical position is supination. So coming back to its normal position would be the supination of that motion. So this pronation and supination motions or actions primarily is accomplished via the proximal radial ulnar joint, the pivotal type of joint. So we're going to look at that. And then we have, again, distal radial ulnar joint too. All right, we're going to look at that in bit details a bit later. So we have the elbow joint formed by the ulnar, radius, and humerus, and then we have the wrist joint formed by the distal end of the radius and two or three carpal bones. Carpal bone is a carpal bone. So ulnar, the head of the ulnar does not participate in the wrist joint. That's another important fact that you need to remember. Okay, that's about it, I think. So by looking at the skeleton. All right. So now let's look at the detailed structure of the radius now. Okay, let's go ahead. Hi, like I said, radius is laterally located in the forearm, and on the medial side you have the ulnar. Now, if we look at the side determination, is this right or left? According to side determination, we need to know certain landmarks. So one of the things that we need to remember is that we have the head on the proximal end. Okay, so and then we have the distal end, which is widened. That's a general feature. And then on the medial side, we see a tuberosity, a bony prominence on the medial side. This is called the radial tuberosity. That's third. And then another important landmark is that on the medial side, as you can see, it's really sharp. So this is the medial side, right? And so this is the lateral side of the radius. So the radius is basically so on the medial side of the arm is basically you have the ulnar, because that's why we call this as the medial border. So medial border is really sharp. That's another important landmark. And the last important landmark is that on the posterior aspect here, on the distal end, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a tubercle here. Okay, this is the dorsal tubercle of the distal end. Dorsal tubercle of distal end of the radius. This is also called Lister's tubercle, but it's looking on the dorsal aspect of the distal end. So by looking at that, is this right or left? Okay, so and other thing is that you have the radial notch. All right, you have the radial notch on the medial side where the head of the ulnar articulates. All right. So if it's like that, so the head, all right. So the head is on the superior side, and then we have the distal end is flattened. The medial border is on the medial side, all right, and the ulnar notch is located medially to the attached with the head of the ulnar, all right. So this could be either, so if this is the midline, so this could be the left, all right, or if it's like this on the right side, it could be right, all right. like this. But one other thing that we need to, if it's not right, why? Because the sharp end, as you can see, the sharp end here it's facing laterally. However, it should face medially, all right, because it's gonna form the interosseous membrane along with the border of the ulnar. So we can put it like this. So the interosseous membrane here, it's facing laterally, all right. So I'm sorry, like this. Ulnar's on the medial side, but still, all right. So interosseous membrane here is facing laterally. But we can do this if we can move the interosseous membrane face medially, correct. The head is on the proximal side, correct. But one thing that's non-positional or it's not correct is that the distal end, the posterior aspect here, as you can see, the tubercle is located posteriorly. So as you can see, this tubercle faces normally posteriorly. So this is the anterior aspect. It should be like this. So basically, this radius is what is the left radius. All right. Okay. So this is the position. So this is the position of the radius. This is the left radius. Okay. On the medial side, you have the ulnar. Or just like this. All right. So let's look at the parts of the radius. First, we have the proximal end is comprised by the head. So the head. All right. Now, one of the important thing anatomically is that the head is disc shape, as you can see. It's disc shape. It has a circumference, flat circumference, round. All right, and the superior surface is compressed or depressed. It's shallow. All right, and you have this is the articular surface where you have the articular cartilage sits on this particular area. So, and therefore, this articulates, the head of the radius articulates with the capitulum of the humerus, of course. So if I get a humerus, it's like so. So what is this? This is the capitulum of the humerus on the lateral side, and articulates with the head of the radius, forming the humeroradial joint. Okay, so this humeroradial joint on the lateral side is part of the wrist joint. Remember, we also had another important joint on the medial side, where the trochlea of the humerus articulates with the trochlear notch of the ulnar, forming the humeroulnar joint. So we have two joints here, humeroradial joint and humeroulnar joint, and this joint basically forms the elbow joint. All right. So let's continue the radius. So this is the head of the radius. One other thing that we need to remember is that the circumference. The circumference articulates with the medial located ulnar, as you can see here. If we put it over here, okay. So we have a notch here. I don't know if you can see it. So you have this notch. Okay. So this notch is the radial notch located in the ulnar. So basically what happens is that the circumference fits in this notch, fits in the ulnar notch. All right. So this is the anterior view. So from across. Okay. So this is the top superior view. Okay, so basically the circumference fits in the notch, and this notch is referred to as the radial notch of the ulnar. So what happens? So the significance of this is that there's also ligament that basically attaches the margins of the anterior margins of the radial notch. So this is the radial notch, anterior margins over here, and then surrounds surrounds the head of the radius, and then attaches to the posterior margin of the radial notch. So you have basically a ligament called the annular ligament. Basically surrounds the circumference of the head then attaches to the edges, the anterior and posterior margins of the radial notch. So the importance of this is that when this is attached, however, the circumference is not strictly connected with these ligaments, allowing freely movable area of the circumference. So what happens? You have the pivotal type of motion in that. So you have this anterior ligament stabilizes the radius, and then you have the pronation motion going on around this articulation. This articulation basically is referred to as the superior radio-ulnar joint. And superior ulnar joint, via the annular ligament, you have the function of pronation and supination. So you have the rotational movements of the head in this notch, and then and this is secured by the surrounding annular ligament. All right. So you have the pronation and supination. Pronation, supination. So what happens is that, let me show you. So this is so basically you have the radius over here in my forearm, you have the ulnar over here, and in between you have the radio-ulnar joint. So what happens, the circumference moves or rotates around the ulnar radial notch of the ulnar like this, right? And this is basically what happens is this is pronation, okay, and this is supination. So this is pronation, supination, just like that. The same thing is like this, is you have pronation and supination backwards. Okay, so this, you have the pronation and supination. So pronation, supination is done via the circumference of the head of the radius with the ulnar radial notch of the ulnar, and rotating around inside the ulnar notch, inside the radial notch of the ulnar. Okay, so that's the circumference. That's the importance of the circumference of the head of the radius. Okay. Okay. One other thing. This is the neck. Just beneath the head, you have the head. The neck is constricted part of the radius. The upper part, just beneath the head, is the neck of the radius. Just beneath the neck here, or associated with it, we have a prominence, bony prominence, which is called the radial tuberosity. So radial tuberosity is basically located, if I put it like this, as you can see, it's on the medial side, all right? So it's on the medial side of the radius. So if you look at it carefully, so this is the radial tuberosity. So the posterior part of the tuberosity, I don't know if you can see it, but it's really rough. However, the anterior part of this tuberosity is smooth. The posterior rough part is basically serves as attachment site for the tendon of the biceps brachii muscle. Okay, remember, biceps brachii muscle basically flexes the forearm and also aids in supination of the forearm. So there's two muscles that supinates the forearm: biceps and supinator muscle. So this is one of the important supinator muscles, of the forearm. So this is the tendon of the biceps brachii attaches to this rough surface of the deltoid tuberosity. In front, you have the smooth part of the deltoid tuberosity, and there's a bursa, synovial bursa attaches to this area. Okay. Below that, you have the shaft. All right, this is the body or the shaft, and you have the distal end of the radius. Okay, let's look at the shaft now, or the body of the radius. So we have three borders and three surfaces. So we have the anterior border here, as you can see. This is the anterior border. This is the medial border, and then we have at the back we have the posterior border. So this is the posterior border at the back. Okay, so posterior border. This is the anterior border, and this is the medial border. Medial border, I don't know if you can define it, but it's really sharp. All right, this is sharp, and this is one of the important aspects of the radius, is that medial border. You have the interosseous membrane that attaches to the medial border. Okay, so then we have the lateral border of the humerus. Okay, and those two borders are connected with each other via the interosseous membrane. And so this is the medial border. So interosseous membrane basically attaches to this border like 3/4 below the radial tuberosity. So this is the radial tuberosity. Below that, from here downwards, you have the interosseous membrane, all right, attaching the medial border of the radius, attaching with the other border of the lateral border of the ulnar. The anterior border, as you can see, starts with just beneath the radial tuberosity. It goes all the way down and forms at the end. It forms the styloid process here. Styloid process is basically a bony protuberance that sticks out on the lateral side of the distal end of the tibia, of the radius. I'm sorry. So this is the anterior border, this is the medial border, and at the back we have the posterior border. Posterior border is primarily felt in the mid-third of the radius. In the lower and upper, you don't see that much. It's ill-defined. It's not really defined well. Another thing is that the anterior border, as you can see, the anterior border comes up all the way down to the radial tuberosity, and this part of the anterior border, it's referred to as the oblique line. All right, so this is the oblique line of the anterior border, and it serves as attachment for one of the important muscles in the forearm. And the surfaces is this is the anterior surface. Okay, this is this is the medial surface. This is the lateral surface, and this is the posterior surface. So anterior surface, the lateral surface, and this is the posterior surface. So in these surfaces, what we find, first of all, in the anterior surface, I don't know if you can see it, but at the top of the anterior surface we have a small notch or small canal or opening. Well, basically it is an opening, and this is referred to as nutrient foramen. And nutrient foramen, there's a branch of the anterior intraocular artery, and this is this branch is called the nutrient artery, and this nutrient artery basically passes through this foramen and supplies the bony structure. And this, like I said earlier, this is the anterior oblique line, or this is the oblique line, or anterior oblique line, and this anterior oblique line serves as attachment for the flexor digitorum superficialis muscle. And then we have other areas which are important areas that certain muscles attach. For instance, on the lateral surface over here, you have the supinator muscle here on the upper third, and you have the pronator teres, lower third, and below you have the brachioradialis on the lower third of the lateral surface of the radius. At the back we have at the posterior surface we have the extensor muscles and the abductor muscles of the thumb. Extensor muscles of the fingers and abductor muscles of the thumb originate from the posterior surface of the radius. Okay, and then also we have the pronator quadratus muscle that also attaches to the lower part of the distal end of the flattened part of this distal end of the radius. Okay, so that's about it for the shaft of the body of the radius. Let's look at the distal part of the radius. So distal part of the radius, which is flattened, widened. Okay, and on the lateral side we have the bony protrusion, and it is called the styloid process of the radius. Just like we saw, remember, the styloid process of the ulnar. Okay, so we have the styloid process of the radius over here, and basically you can feel it in your wrist. So basically somewhere around here, this is the styloid process of the radius, and basically the styloid process, here is the anatomical snuff box, and part of this anatomical snuff box, it forms the styloid process forms the floor of this box. One other thing is in that in the distal part of the radius, you can get the radial pulse. So along here, the distal part, this is the wrist joint. Okay, so this distal part of the radius, laterally, there's a radial artery that passes along the distal part, and then passes to the to the palm of the hand. And from here you can get a radial pulse. You can put the index finger and your third finger along here. I don't know if you can see it. If you put these two fingers gently on the side, you can get your radial pulse. So basically, if this is the left radius, so this is the radius coming in, this is the radial styling process of the radius, just medial to that around about here, you can feel a tendon. So if you put your index and your third finger gently on this tendon, you can get your radial pulse. Okay, so that's how you get your radial pulse. So put it around about here, you can get your radial pulse. Why? Because the radial artery passes along this area. Okay, so the distal end of the radius, you have five surfaces: the anterior surface, you have the medial surface, you have the lateral surface, you have the posterior surface, and you have the inferior surface. Okay, so this is basically the inferior surface, or the superior surface. Okay, so the inner side of the radius. Okay, so this is the anterior surface. So anterior surface basically forms the attachment site for the important ligament. So we're going to look at these ligaments a bit later. The palmar radiocarpal ligaments. So we have on the palmar side, and plus we have in the dorsal side, we have the palmar carpal ligaments. Okay, so the palmar carpal ligaments, and we have the dorsal carpal ligaments at the back. So basically, it serves attachment for this ligament. So this is the anterior side here, and also we have pronator quadratus muscle also attaches to this particular area too. On the medial side here, as you can see, we have the ulnar notch of the radius. Okay, so this is the ulnar notch of the radius, and the head of the ulnar basically attaches to this notch here, forming the distal radio-ulnar joint. So this is the distal radio-ulnar joint, where the head of the ulnar attaches to the ulnar notch of the radius. All right. So basically, on the medial aspect of the distal end of the radius, we have this notch here, and this notch is called the ulnar notch. All right. And also, on top of the edges of the ulnar notch, we have the articular disc. Articular disc attaches to these edges of the ulnar notch at the upper end, and attaches to the stylic process, and it goes all the way down and attaches to the stylic process of the ulnar. This is an articular disc. Basically, what happens is that articular disc is important in that it serves a component of the wrist joint. All right. Now we're going to look at what makes up the wrist joint, but one of the components of the wrist joint is the articular cartilage. So the important thing here is that the ulnar does not participate in the wrist joint. What participates in the wrist joint is the articular disc. It's a fibrocartilaginous structure, okay, and that participates in the wrist joint. But however, the head of the ulnar, or the ulnar bone, does not participate in the wrist joint. All right, so that's the and then let's look at the posterior aspect of the distal end of the radius. This is the posterior end. As you can see, there's a lot of tubercles and there's a lot of grooves here. All right, and one of the prominent tubercles that we see here is at the middle, and just next to these next to this tubercle, we have these important compartmentalization of the extensor muscles. The tendons basically pass through these grooves and enters the dorsal aspect of the hand. So this is the radius. So basically, we're talking about the tendons at the back of the forearm, and these tendons basically goes to the dorsal aspect of the hand, and these tendons basically are primarily involved in extension of the finger, extension of the little finger, the thumb, and so forth. So and so basically so these grooves are the sites where where the tendons basically go through from this wrist joint to the hand. So one of the prominent tubercles located on the dorsal aspect of distal end of the radius is this tubercle here, and this is referred to as Lister's tubercles. Lister's tubercle. And so Lister tubercles, just medial to it, as you can see, there's a groove here, a real prominent groove, and this groove basically lodges the extensor pollicis longus tendon. So what happens? Okay, so and this extensor pollicis longus tendon basically goes to, so the muscle from the back of the radius, and it goes to the pollicis. Pollicis means, as you can see, is the is a thumb. So it goes like this. It goes to the thumb and extends the thumb. Okay, so you have this tubercle. All right. Okay. Yeah. So this tubercle acts like a pulley. So it's like this. All right. The tubercle is like this. The tendon goes in this direction. So as it goes vertical, it obliquely turns around to the thumb and extends the thumb. So it acts like a pulley. All right. So this tubercle acts like a pulley, and clinically it's important landmark, both clinically and in surgical operations. This landmark is important in various operations and procedures. Clinically, the position of this tubercle is really important landmark. Okay, and this is called the Lister's tubercle. Don't forget that. All right. So that's about it. And then let's look at the inferior surface. So we have in the surface we have these articular facets, articular surfaces, which articulate this. We have on the lateral side we have a triangular articular facet or surface, and then on the medial side we have a quadrangular articular surface. So on the lateral, this triangular part articulates with the scaphoid. The medial quadrangular surface articulates with a lunate bone. All right. So here, if we look at this wrist joint around about here, okay. So this is the lateral. This is the medial. This is the radius. This is the ulnar. Okay. And on the lateral side, the thumb is always on the lateral side. Don't forget. And the little finger. So this is the little finger is always on the medial side. So the lateral, like I said, it's a triangular articular facet articulates with this bone here, and this is called the scaphoid. And on the medial, it's a quadrangular articular surface. It articulates with this guy here. This is called the lunate. This is the boat shaped. This is a moon shaped bone. And small amount of this bone here, the next bone is triquetral or triquetrum, articulates with the articular disc located closely associated with the ulnar and the radial notch. So basically, what forms, if I ask the question, what forms the wrist joint? We have this wrist joint basically is referred to as the radiocarpal joint, which is formed by the articular surface of the radius, distal end of the radius, and in terms of the carpal bones, we have the scaphoid, lunate, and small amount of the triquetrum. Plus, we have the articular disc, which is located between the triquetrum and the head of the ulnar and the ulnar notch. So basically here, triquetrum basically attaches to the articular disc rather than the head of the ulnar. All right, so this is the wrist joint, primarily formed by the radiocarpal joint. It is also referred to as radiocarpal joint, formed by the radial bone and the carpal bones. All right, I think that's about it there. What else? All right, one other thing that we need to also recall is that certain amount of fractures that might occur in the radius. So one fracture, we have the first, so basically this is what this is the right or left radius. Okay, this is the, of course, the right radius. Why? Because we have the ulnar on the medial side and we have the radius on the lateral side. Okay, So this is the right radius, and this is the right upper forearm and right hand. Of course, we have the thumb, little finger radius on the lateral side and ulnar on the medial side. So this is your right hand, or the right forearm. Okay, so we have a fracture line just beneath the radial tuberosity. The radial tuberosity is over here, where it attaches the head of the biceps tendon. Just beneath that, we have the fracture line. So, in terms of fractures that occur that in radius, it occurs around about this region here. And one of the things in terms of fractures, it occurs in the radius rather than ulnar. Why? Because the radius is also referred to as the weight-bearing bone of the upper extremity. Why? Because of the wrist attachment. As you can see, the weight that is created by the hand, by lifting or pushing, whatever, so it's transmitted through the wrist joint to the radius. Remember, I said the ulnar does not participate in the wrist joint. So basically, the weight directly is transmitted or transferred to the radius. So basically, the fractures is mostly occurred or vulnerable is this bone here, is the radius. But however, weight after it passes on to the radius, it's then transverse or transmitted to the ulnar through the intraosseous membrane. So it goes to the intraosseous membrane. From here, most of it passes on to the ulnar to the humerus, and also the weight is also passed from the humeral radial joint. It's passed on to the humerus too. But however, hence the most of the weight is occupied within the radius. So this is the first fracture that may occur. And this is the fracture line. The second important fracture that may occur is what we call as colles fracture. Colles fracture, it occurs on the distal end of the radius, just superior to the distal end, and this is the what we call as a colles fracture. One of the other fracture that we might see is the fracture that might occur in the stylic process. This stylic process fracture is also called a chauffeur's fracture. The reason why they call this as a chauffeur's fracture is that initial days when you start a car with, you try to start a car and it backfires. Okay, when you try to crank it, it backfires. When it backfires, basically pushes the hand backwards, and therefore you might experience a fracture in the stylic process of the radius. So this is chauffeur's fracture, colles fracture, and this is basically a fractured line fracture that might occur just beneath the articular radial tuberosity. One other fractures or subluxation or dislocation of the head of the radius would be the nursemaid fracture or nursemaid dislocation or pulled elbow. Is that in this area? I remember I said that we had the annular ligament that completely surrounds the circumference of the radius. Okay. And attaches to the anterior part attaches to the anterior margin of the radial notch, and then the posterior part attaches to the posterior margin of the radial notch. Okay, right. But however, when the arm is pulled, okay, when it's pulled, basically this radius subluxates, or moves or dislocates, moves downward and moves away from the articulation of the radial notch and the circumference, and basically moves away from the annular ligament. It's just displaced articulation of the radial head. So when you pull, and this primarily occurs in the toddlers, like the age from 1 to 4, the newborn children or toddler. You know, when they're age 2 or 3 or 4. So because the annular ligament is still developmental, it's still developing, and it's not really mature. So basically, it's not really a secure or strong articulation because of the development process that's going on in terms of the annular ligament. So they call it nursemaid dislocation or pulled arm subluxation of the radial head of the radius. Okay, so that's about it, I think. All right. Okay, so okay, one other thing that we need to cover is the joint and the ligaments that are associated with the joint. This is the elbow joint. This is the humerus. Okay, on top, and then we have the ulnar on the medial side. This is the ulnar, and this is the radius on the lateral side. So we have the elbow joint formed by the humeral ulnar and humeroradial joint, which is the part of the hinge joint. As you know, flexion extension occurs around this joint. Okay, so this is a joint capsule. So what do we find here? One of the important ligaments that okay, this number 5, as you can see, it's a tendon, and as you can see on the medial side of the upper part of the radius, we had the radial tuberosity, and on this radial tuberosity we have the attachment point of the tendon of the biceps brachii muscle. So this is the tendon of the biceps brachii muscle. So okay, this is not a ligament, it's a tendon of the biceps brachii muscle. Just below so we have 2 ligaments associated with the radial tuberosity, below and above. Below, which is this ligament here, is referred to as number 6. This is the oblique cord. All right. So basically, attaches the or connects the radius and ulnar together. All right. So this is the oblique cord, and above the radial tuberosity, which we can see here, there's another ligament called the quadrate ligament. This also attaches the radius to the ulnar. So above the radial tuberosity, we have the quadrate ligament. Below the radial tuberosity, we have the oblique cord. We have 2 important ligaments that attaches on the lower part of the ulnar and radius, attaches the radius to the ulnar. So these 2 ligaments are important. The other important ligaments are the collateral ligaments. So we have medial collateral, lateral collateral. This part is the medial collateral. How do I know that this part was a medial collateral? Because the medial epicondyle is most prominent and it's protruding out. Okay, this is the lateral epicondyle. All right, and lateral epicondyle is smaller than the medial. So the medial is most prominent. So that's why I said that this is the medial side, and therefore we have the medial collateral on this side here, and therefore this side here has the lateral collateral ligament. So let's look at the medial collateral ligaments over here. So basically, this is the medial collateral. As you know, if this is the medial epicondyle and the medial collateral ligament, and this bony part should belong to the ulnar, of course. Ulnar is medial located in the forearm. So this is the ulnar. This is the medial epicondyle of the humerus, and therefore this is the medial collateral ligament. All right. Now, medial collateral ligament, all right, which it's also referred to as the ulnar collateral ligament. So it's used changeably, the ulnar collateral ligament or medial collateral ligament of the elbow joint. So we also have collateral ligaments in the wrist joint too. So we need to also express the names of the joints in order to localize the exact place of the ligament. So this is the medial collateral ligament of the elbow joint, or the ulnar collateral ligament of the ulnar joint. Now, the medial collateral ligament has 3 bands, as you can see here. I partially mentioned about these bands in my previous videos. We had the anterior, posterior, and oblique band. Okay, so we have, this is the anterior band. Okay, this is the anterior band, also referred to as anterior bundle. Anterior band, okay, attaches with to the as you can see, the coronoid process, and goes all the way down to the medial epicondyle. Then we have the posterior band, attaches the olecranon, okay, olecranon to the medial epicondyle. This is the posterior band, and this is the oblique or transverse band or transverse bundle, it attaches the olecranon to the coronate process. So we have this triangular structure, what we call as the medial collateral or ulnar collateral ligament. It's a triangular shaped ligament. We have the entry band, posterior band, and the transverse band, or entry bundle, posterior bundle, or the oblique transverse band or bundle. Okay, so this is the important ligament that stabilizes the medial side of the elbow joint. And then we have the similar structures on the lateral side. So this is the lateral epicondyle, and on the lateral side we have the tibia, of course. So we have the radius, of course, and basically this is the radial collateral or radial collateral ligament, or we call it as lateral collateral ligament. So this is lateral collateral or radial collateral ligament. Okay, this ligament here, as you can see, is the annular ligament. The annular ligament, as you know, it basically surrounds the circumference of the head of the radius and attaches to the anterior and posterior margins of the radial notch of the ulnar. So this is the annular ligament. One other ligament that we see here is this ligament here, is the lateral ulnar radial ligament. So this ligament here is the lateral ulnar ligament. So it attaches the ulnar to the head and also goes all the way down to the medial epicondyle. This is the lateral ulnar ligament, and the rest of this ligaments that you see here is basically the capsular ligament, or basically the articular capsule. All these are the articular capsule or capsular ligament or fibrous capsule that makes up the elbow joint. And this number 9 is the interosseous membrane, of course. Okay, so that's about it of the elbow joint and associated ligaments. I think that's about it. If I missed anything, you can just come on in and ask me. I'll be around. Thank you very much for listening. So this is the end, basically the end of the basic landmarks and all the explanation of the concerning the radius. So we finished the upper forearm bones. We'll see you next time with our next osteology video. Thank you very much for listening. Bye bye.